The Helix research station orbited the dead moon of Carvex 7 like a metallic predator, its gleaming hull reflecting the cold light of distant stars. Inside its sterile corridors, Chief Scientist Vex Moran adjusted his biosuit with the practiced arrogance of someone who had never been wrong about anything, ever. Another day, another species to catalog, Vex Moran muttered to his assistant, Nix Terra, who scuttled behind him on 6 spindly legs. "Tell me, Nix, what makes today so special?" "Sir, long-range sensors detected an unknown vessel approximately 4 parsecs from our position. Preliminary scans suggest organic life forms." Vex Moran's 3 eyes widened with genuine interest. "Organic? How delightfully primitive. What classification?" "Unknown, sir. The ship appears to be a colony vessel. Designation reads Terra Nova." "Terra Nova?" Vex Moran's mandibles clicked in amusement. "How quaint. These creatures actually name their flying metal boxes. Bring them in, Nix. I could use some fresh genetic material for the archives." The capture went exactly as planned, which should have been the first warning sign. The human vessel, massive by their standards but laughably small compared to Helix Station, offered no resistance. Their primitive weapons systems barely registered on the alien shields. Within hours, the entire ship was secured in the station's primary docking bay. "Sir, we have successfully captured 237 specimens," reported Security Chief Thaknovus, his voice crackling through the comm system. "They appear to be in some form of suspended animation." "Suspended animation?" Vex Moran's laugh echoed through the laboratory. "These beings actually freeze themselves for interstellar travel. How absolutely barbaric. Wake one up, Thak. I want to see what passes for intelligence in this species." The human they selected was unremarkable by Vex Moran's standards. Female, based on preliminary biological scans. Medium height, dark hair, and those peculiar binocular eyes that seemed to focus on everything at once. Her designation, according to the ship's primitive records, was Maya Torres, Chief Medical Officer. A medical officer. Vex Moran mused as he observed the human through the containment field. How convenient. She will understand exactly what we are doing to her. Maya Torres awakened slowly, her eyes fluttering open like someone emerging from a deep sleep. The first thing she saw was Vex Moran's towering form, all purple chitin and glowing bioluminescent patches. "Good morning," Specimen Vex Moran said in perfectly translated human language. "I am Chief Scientist Vex Moran of the Helix Research Station. You have been selected for genetic analysis." Maya's response was immediate and entirely unexpected. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't even seem particularly surprised. Instead, she sat up slowly and looked directly at him. "You made a mistake," she said calmly. "Excuse me?" Vex Moran's amusement was palpable. "I believe you misunderstand your situation, Specimen. You are now property of the Galactic Research Consortium. Your genetic material will contribute to our understanding of primitive biological systems." "My name is Maya Torres, not Specimen," she replied with the kind of steady voice that made Vex Moran's confidence waver for exactly half a second. "And you made a mistake taking us." "The only mistake," Vex Moran said, his tone dripping with condescension, "would be wasting time on conversation when we could be extracting your cellular structure. Nix, prepare the blood extraction protocols." "Yes, sir." "Initiating standard containment procedures for unknown biological material." Maya watched as Nix Terra prepared the extraction equipment with methodical precision. Her expression remained unnervingly calm, as if she were observing a routine medical procedure rather than her own vivisection. "Standard containment," she said quietly. "That's your first mistake. Enlighten me, Specimen. What exactly am I doing wrong?" "You are assuming we are like every other species you have captured. Soft, predictable, easy to categorize." Maya's smile was small but somehow terrifying. "You are about to learn why humans survived long enough to reach the stars." Vex Moran's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Survived? You barely achieved interstellar travel. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your biology is fragile carbon-based matter. What could you possibly teach a civilization that has mastered genetic engineering for millennia? Adaptation, Maya said simply. Adaptation. Vex Moran scoffed. We have protocols for every known biological variation in the galaxy. Your species will be no different. Maya Torres leaned back against the containment field, her eyes never leaving Vex Moran's face. Protocols assume you understand what you are dealing with. You don't. We will see about that, Vex Moran said, signaling Nyx Terra to begin the extraction. Let's see exactly what makes humans so special. As the needle pierced Maya's skin and her blood flowed into the collection vial, she spoke one last time. You should have left us sleeping. Dr. Quinn Zeta practically vibrated with excitement as she examined the first vials of human blood under her bioscanner. Her forearms moved in perfect synchronization, adjusting controls and calibrating instruments with the enthusiasm of someone about to make scientific history. Vex Moran, you need to see this immediately, she called across the laboratory, her voice pitched higher than usual. These readings are extraordinary. Vex Moran approached with the casual stride of someone expecting to be impressed by his own brilliance. Extraordinary how? Please tell me these humans have something more interesting than standard carbon-based cellular structure. Look at this genetic complexity. Quinn Zeta gestured at her display screen with two of her arms while continuing to work with the other two. I have never seen anything like it. The DNA strands aren't just double helix, they are adaptive. Watch this. She introduced a mild acidic solution to one of the blood samples. Instead of breaking down as expected, the blood cells immediately began producing neutralizing enzymes. Fascinating, Vex Moran admitted grudgingly. Rapid adaptation to environmental threats. Still hardly unprecedented. The Kethmorian slug people do something similar. No, sir, you don't understand. Quinn Zeta's excitement was reaching dangerous levels. The Kethmorians take cycles to adapt. This happened in real time. And look, the adaptation isn't just defensive. She switched to a different screen showing cellular reproduction rates. The human blood cells were multiplying at an alarming pace, but more disturbing was how they seemed to be analyzing their environment. They are learning, Quinn Zeta whispered. The cells are actually studying our containment protocols. Don't be ridiculous, Vex Moran snapped. Cellular intelligence is impossible. You are seeing patterns that don't exist. Sir, with respect, look at this data stream. Quinn Zeta pulled up another display. Each blood cell that comes into contact with our containment field shows immediate structural changes. They are not just adapting, they are reverse engineering our technology. Vex Moran examined the data with growing annoyance. The readings were indeed unusual, but his scientific arrogance wouldn't allow him to admit concern. Interesting, but hardly threatening. Increase containment to Level 7 protocols. Level 7? Quinn Zeta's voice cracked slightly. Sir, that's reserved for Class 5 biohazards. This is just blood from a primitive species. Exactly. And if primitive blood can cause you this much excitement, imagine what proper containment will teach us about their limitations. What neither scientist noticed was the small display in the corner of Quinn Zeta's workstation. The one showing atmospheric composition in the laboratory. The oxygen levels had increased by 0.03% in the last hour. Technician Blix Vorn, meanwhile, was having his own encounter with human biology. As the junior member of the research team, he'd been assigned the tedious task of cleaning the extraction equipment. Standard procedure, really. Rinse, sterilize, catalog, repeat. These humans bleed a lot, he muttered to himself, wiping down the extraction needle. Much more than the Altarian bat creatures we studied last month. A small drop of Maya's blood had somehow avoided the initial cleaning. As Blix Vorn's bare hand brushed against it, the blood seemed to absorb into his skin almost instantly. Ha, he said, examining his palm. That's odd. Within minutes, Blix Vorn began feeling strange. His usually steady hands started trembling, and his vision became sharper, more focused. Most disturbing of all, he found himself thinking faster than usual, making connections he'd never made before. "Dr. Quinzetta," he called out, his voice sounding different somehow. "I think there might be a contamination issue." Contamination? Quinzetta spun around, all four arms moving to different control panels. "What kind of contamination?" "I'm not sure. I feel different. Stronger. But also hungry." Quinzetta's bioscanner immediately locked onto Blix Vorn, and what she saw made her freeze in terror. His cellular structure was changing in real time. Human DNA markers were spreading through his system like wildfire, but instead of destroying his alien biology, they were enhancing it. "Vex Moran," she screamed. "Emergency containment protocols. Now." "What's the problem?" Vex Moran demanded, but one look at Blix Vorn answered his question. The technician's eyes had changed color, shifting from their normal purple to an unsettling brownish hue. His movements were more fluid, more predatory. "Initiating Level 9 containment," Vex Moran announced, his voice finally showing a crack of uncertainty. "All personnel step away from the contaminated individual." False fields sprang up around Blix Vorn, but he didn't seem distressed. Instead, he studied the energy barriers with the same analytical intensity that Quinzetta had shown with the blood samples. "This won't hold," Blix Vorn said, his voice now carrying an odd accent. "Human biology doesn't just adapt, it conquers." "Impossible," Vex Moran insisted. "Level 9 containment can hold a small star's worth of energy." Blix Vorn placed his hand against the force field, and everyone in the laboratory watched in horror as the energy barrier began to fluctuate. The human DNA in his system wasn't just adapting to the containment. It was learning to feed on it. "Sir," Quinzetta's voice was barely a whisper. "The atmospheric readings, oxygen levels are continuing to rise. Carbon dioxide is increasing. The humans are terraforming our laboratory from the inside." "That's scientifically impossible," Vex Moran stated, but his confidence was evaporating faster than water in vacuum. "Cellular-level terraforming requires conscious intent." "What if," Quinzetta said slowly, "human cells are conscious?" Before Vex Moran could respond, the force field around Blix Vorn failed completely. The enhanced technician stood calmly in the center of the laboratory, no longer entirely alien, no longer entirely human, but something far more dangerous than either. "You wanted to study us," Blix Vorn said with Maya's smile. "Congratulations. Now we are studying you back." The laboratory's containment alarms began screaming. The blood samples were no longer behaving like blood at all. Dr. Quinzetta stared at her containment vessels with growing horror as Maya's blood began exhibiting properties that defied every law of biology she'd studied in her 3 centuries of scientific research. The crimson liquid moved with purpose, flowing against gravity, forming complex patterns that resembled neural networks. "This is impossible," she muttered, adjusting her bioscanner for the 15th time. "Blood doesn't think." "What did you say?" Vex Moran demanded, his attention split between Quinzetta's readings and the increasingly unstable Blix Vorn, who was now examining the laboratory equipment with unsettling intelligence. "The blood samples, sir. They are exhibiting coordinated behavior. Look at this pattern analysis." Quinzetta's 4 arms danced across multiple control surfaces. Each sample is communicating with the others through electromagnetic pulses. They are operating as a collective intelligence. Vex Moran's 3 eyes narrowed dangerously. "You are suggesting that human blood is sentient? That's beyond ridiculous, even for your wild theories." "I'm suggesting," Quinzetta said with forced calm, "that we fundamentally misunderstood what we captured. This isn't just biological material, it's a biological weapon that's been evolving for millions of years." Before Vex Moran could respond, Blix Vorn spoke up from across the laboratory, his voice now carrying an odd harmonic quality that made everyone's skin crawl. "She's right, you know. Humans didn't survive by being peaceful. We survived by being adaptable. And right now, we are adapting to you. technician Wex Prime, who had been working at a nearby station, suddenly dropped her tools and clutched her head. Something's wrong. I feel strange. Hot. Like my blood is boiling. Quinn Zeta's scanner immediately focused on Wex Prime, and the readings made her mandibles click in terror. She's been exposed. Somehow the human genetic material is spreading through the air filtration system. That's impossible. Vex Moran shouted. Our atmospheric controls are designed to filter out any biological contaminants down to the molecular level. Human biology doesn't follow our rules, Blixvorn said with a laugh that sounded disturbingly familiar to Maya's earlier chuckle. We don't just adapt to environments, we change them. Make them suitable for us. Your fancy filters? They are just helping us spread faster. Wex Prime's transformation was happening faster than Blixvorn's had. Her normally blue-tinted skin was shifting to a more pinkish hue, and her movements were becoming more fluid, more predatory. Most disturbing of all, her eyes were changing, pupils dilating and contracting as if adjusting to entirely new visual spectrums. The oxygen levels. Quinn Zeta screamed, checking her atmospheric readings. They have increased by 8% in the last 20 minutes. The humans are terraforming our laboratory atmosphere to make it more suitable for their biology, and more toxic for ours, added research assistant Kix9, who was backing away from both transformed technicians. I can barely breathe. The air feels thick. Wrong? Rex Moran finally activated the emergency protocols, but his hands were shaking as he worked the controls, initiating full laboratory lockdown. Emergency atmospheric purge in 3, 2. Won't work, Wex Prime said, her voice now harmonizing perfectly with Blixvorn's. Human cells don't just survive in vacuum, they evolve to thrive in it. You are just giving us a new environment to adapt to. The atmospheric purge systems engaged, but instead of clearing the air of contaminants, they seemed to spread the infection faster. Within minutes, 3 more technicians were clutching their heads and showing early signs of genetic modification. How is this possible? Kix9 demanded, his voice rising to a panicked shriek. Genetic integration takes weeks. Months. This is happening in real time. Because, said a new voice, and everyone turned to see research intern Jax Beta speaking with the same harmonic quality as the others, humans evolved on a death world. Every day was an extinction event. We learned to adapt fast or die. And dying, well, that was never really an option. Dr. Quinn Zeta's bioscanner was now detecting human genetic markers in 70% of the laboratory staff. The infection wasn't just spreading, it was accelerating. Sir, she said to Vex Moran, her voice barely audible over the growing chaos, I'm reading massive cellular changes in everyone who's been exposed. The human DNA isn't replacing our genetic structure, it's optimizing it, making us stronger, faster, more efficient. That sounds like a good thing, whispered lab coordinator Tix Null, who was fighting her own transformation. It would be, Quinn Zeta replied grimly, if we were still in control of our own minds. The transformed technicians moved with eerie coordination, their actions perfectly synchronized as they began systematically dismantling the laboratory's containment systems. They worked with the efficiency of a hive mind, but retained enough individual personality to make their actions deeply unsettling. You wanted to study human genetics, Blixvorn said, his smile now looking disturbingly human. Congratulations. You are about to become part of the experiment. Vex Moran backed toward the emergency exit, but found his path blocked by Wex Prime, who moved with predatory grace. Where are you going, Chief Scientist? The real research is just beginning. What do you want? Vex Moran demanded, his scientific arrogance finally cracking completely. Want? Jax Beta tilted her head, the gesture unnaturally human on her alien features. We want what every successful species wants. To survive. To spread. To ensure our genetic material finds new hosts. And lucky for us, added the newest voice in the growing chorus of transformed aliens, you have provided us with an entire space station full of potential carriers. The laboratory's emergency lights began flashing red as more alarms joined the cacophony. In the distance, Vex Moran could hear screams echoing through the station's corridors as the infection spread beyond the laboratory walls. This was supposed to be routine genetic sampling, he whispered to himself. Routine, Blixvorn laughed, the sound now carrying harmonics from a dozen transformed voices. You thought humans would be routine. That was your mistake, Chief Scientist. Humans are never routine. We are the apex survivors of a planet that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. And now, the collective voice of the transformed aliens concluded with terrifying satisfaction. It's your turn to evolve. Security Chief Thak Novus had dealt with containment breaches before. Escaped specimens, equipment failures, even the occasional research accident that turned half a lab into sentient slime. But this was something entirely beyond his 3 decades of experience. All security teams to level 7, he barked into his comm unit, his voice echoing through the station's corridors. We have a Code Black contamination event. Repeat, Code Black. The response he received made his blood run cold. Sir, this is Team Delta. We can't reach level 7. The corridors are wrong. The walls are breathing, and the air tastes like copper. 3 of my men are down, but they are not dead. They are changing. Changing how? Thak Novus demanded, though he suspected he already knew the answer. They look human, sir, but they are still our people. They remember everything, but they are speaking in unison. And sir, they know things they shouldn't know about our security protocols, our weapon systems, The transmission cut to static. Thak Novus switched to the main laboratory channel. Vex Moran, what exactly did you do down there? We followed standard protocols. Vex Moran's voice was high with panic. Simple genetic sampling. Blood extraction. Nothing that should have caused this. Should have, came Maya's voice over the laboratory's communication system. She'd somehow gained access to their comm network from her containment cell. That's the problem with you people. You think in terms of should have, would have, could have. Humans think in terms of what is. Specimen. Thak Novus roared. How did you access our communications? My name is Maya Torres, and I have been trying to warn you for the past hour. Her voice carried a mixture of frustration and genuine concern. You need to evacuate this station immediately. What you have started can't be stopped, but it can be contained if you act fast. You are in no position to make demands, Thak Novus snarled. I'm not making demands, I'm offering advice. Free of charge. Because in about 20 minutes, none of you are going to be capable of rational thought. Dr. Quinn Zeta's panicked voice cut through the channel. Sir, she's right. The infection rate is exponential. I'm reading human genetic markers in 60% of the station's atmosphere. Whatever this is, it's not just biological, it's viral, airborne, and adaptive. How is that possible? Thak Novus demanded. Maya's laugh was bitter. You want the simple explanation or the scientific one? Just talk. Simple version? Humans are living biological weapons. We evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill us every single day. Diseases, predators, climate catastrophes, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, meteor impacts, Earth threw everything it had at us for millions of years. So, Thak Novus was monitoring security feeds, watching in horror as his teams reported more and more impossible situations. So we didn't just survive. We turned every threat into an advantage. Diseases, we incorporated their genetic material into our immune systems. Toxins? We learned to metabolize them. Radiation? We adapted to repair cellular damage faster than it could accumulate. That's impossible, Vex Moran interrupted. No species can adapt that quickly. No species except us, Maya replied grimly. And now you have introduced human genetic material into an alien ecosystem. Congratulations, you have just created the perfect hybrid predator. Security Team Gamma's leader, Nex Voss, came on the comm with a voice that sounded disturbingly calm. Sir, I need to report something unusual. My team has successfully contained the infected individuals in Section C. Finally, some good news, Thaknovis muttered. However, Nex Voss continued, we have discovered that containment is voluntary. The infected aren't trying to escape. They are waiting for something. Waiting for what? Us to understand, came the reply, but now Nex Voss's voice had that same harmonic quality that marked the transformed. They are not trying to spread the infection through force. They are demonstrating its benefits: enhanced strength, improved cognitive function, expanded sensory perception. Team Gamma, report your status immediately. Status is optimal, sir. We have never felt better. More alive. More complete. Thaknovis cut the channel and turned to his remaining untransformed security staff. How many teams do we have left? 6, sir. But 3 are reporting contact with infected personnel. And, sir, the infected aren't hostile. They are helpful. They are sharing information, offering assistance, working together in ways that our people never did before. That's the most terrifying thing I have heard all day, Thaknovis admitted. Maya's voice crackled through the comm again. Chief, you need to understand something about human biology. We are pack hunters, social creatures. When we adapt, we don't just change ourselves, we change our environment to support the pack. Right now, your people aren't being destroyed by human genetics, they are being recruited. Recruited for what? Survival. The human genetic template doesn't just make individuals stronger, it makes groups more effective, more cooperative, more capable of working toward common goals. Dr. Quinzetta's voice joined the conversation, though she now sounded oddly serene. She's correct, Chief. I have been monitoring the neural activity of the transformed personnel. Their brain patterns show unprecedented levels of cooperation and shared consciousness. They are not losing their individuality, they are gaining collective intelligence. Quinzetta, are you infected? Yes. Transformed? Absolutely. Improved? Beyond question. Her voice carried a note of wonder. Chief, the human genetic template isn't a disease, it's an upgrade. My cognitive capacity has increased by 40%. My reflexes are faster, my senses sharper, my emotional stability enhanced. But you are not you anymore. I'm more me than I have ever been. I'm just better. Thaknovis checked his remaining security feeds and felt his heart sink. Station personnel were moving through the corridors in perfect coordination, their actions synchronized like parts of a vast machine. But they weren't moving like zombies or mindless drones. They moved with purpose, intelligence, and an eerie sense of joy. Maya, he said finally, what happens to those who resist the transformation? Nothing violent, she replied. Human pack behavior includes protecting non-combatants. But Chief, resistance is ultimately futile. Not because you will be forced to change, but because you will want to. The human template doesn't just improve biology, it improves happiness, cooperation, sense of purpose. And if we evacuate? If we abandon the station? Then you will carry the infection to every world you touch. Human genetics don't just adapt to new environments, they prepare those environments for human habitation. You have essentially turned yourselves into terraforming agents. Thaknovis looked at his remaining staff, seeing the fear in their eyes slowly being replaced by curiosity. In the distance, he could hear laughter echoing through the station's corridors. Not maniacal laughter, but genuine joy, as if his people were discovering something wonderful. How long do we have? He asked quietly. Until what? Until the transformation is complete? Until the entire station is converted? Or until you realize that fighting this isn't just pointless, it's cruel? Before he could answer, his remaining security officers began removing their helmets, breathing deeply of the station's increasingly human-friendly atmosphere. Sir, one of them said with a smile, maybe we should listen to what they have to say. The station's emergency klaxons continued to wail, but somehow they sounded less like warnings and more like celebration. The cargo transport Void Dancer had already been gone for 6 hours when Thaknovis realized the magnitude of their mistake. Tell me again why you authorized a supply run during a Code Black containment event, he said to Navigation Officer Plex Korn, whose transformation was now nearly complete. Her skin had taken on a healthier, more vibrant hue, and her movements carried an efficiency that was both impressive and deeply unsettling. Because the crew of the Void Dancer needed medical supplies for their next colony run, Plex Korn replied with perfect logic. And because the human genetic template recognizes the importance of supporting the broader community. We are not just thinking about this station anymore, Chief. We are thinking about the entire sector. The entire sector, Thaknovus repeated slowly. Plex, that ship is carrying contaminated atmosphere, transformed crew members, and probably a dozen other vectors for spreading human genetics. Do you understand what that means? Yes, she said with a smile that was becoming disturbingly familiar throughout the station. It means we are sharing the greatest evolutionary advancement in galactic history with everyone who needs it most. Thaknovus activated his long-range communications array with hands that were beginning to tremble. Not from fear of transformation, but from the growing realization that he was fighting a battle that had already been lost the moment they'd punctured Maya's skin. The Galactic Council emergency frequency, he transmitted. This is Helix Research Station requesting immediate quarantine protocols for the following vessels and colonies. The response came back faster than he'd expected, and from a source that made his remaining natural instincts scream in alarm. Helix Station, this is Council Medical Authority Dr. Rix Morvan speaking. We have been monitoring your situation with great interest. Please provide complete biological data on the human specimen you acquired. Dr. Rix Morvan, we have a Class 5 biological contamination event spreading across multiple star systems. This isn't a research opportunity, it's a galactic emergency. Thaknovus, came Maya's voice over their communications channel, asked the good doctor about the colony reports they have been receiving for the past 8 hours. What colony reports? Thaknovus demanded. Dr. Rix Morvan's pause was long enough to be concerning. We have received unusual transmissions from 14 separate colonies in the past 6 hours. Reports of rapid improvements in crop yields, enhanced atmospheric composition, dramatic reductions in crime rates, and unprecedented levels of interspecies cooperation. Improvements? Thaknovus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Doctor, those colonies have been infected with human genetic material. They are not improvements, they are the symptoms of contamination. Are they? Dr. Rix Morvan's voice carried a note of scientific curiosity that Thaknovus found deeply unsettling. Its colony designation Zeta Prime reported a 40% increase in agricultural efficiency overnight. Their atmosphere is now perfectly balanced for multiple species types. And perhaps most interesting, their violent crime rate has dropped to 0. Because the criminals have been genetically modified. Or because, Maya interjected, humans evolved sophisticated social cooperation mechanisms alongside our survival instincts. Chief, May, what do you think happens when you take a species that survived by working together and introduce that genetic template into societies that have been struggling with cooperation for millennia? Dr. Rix Morvan's voice returned, but now it carried that familiar harmonic quality. She raises an excellent point. We have just received updated reports from the affected colonies. No fatalities, no casualties, no resistance to the genetic integration process. Instead, we are seeing the most rapid social and technological advancement in recorded galactic history. Doctor, please tell me you haven't been exposed to human genetic material. Exposed? No, Thaknovus. We invited it in. 3 hours ago, the Galactic Council voted unanimously to begin controlled exposure protocols across all member worlds. Thaknovus felt his legs give out beneath him. You did what? We analyzed the data from your station and the affected colonies. The human genetic template isn't a weapon, it's a solution. To hunger, to conflict, to resource scarcity, to social dysfunction. In 6 hours, humans have solved problems that we have been struggling with for centuries, by turning everyone into humans. By optimizing everyone, Maya corrected. Chief, You keep thinking of this as infection or contamination. But what if it's actually evolution? What if you have accidentally stumbled onto the next step in galactic civilization? Novus activated his emergency protocols and pulled up the galactic communications network. What he saw made him wish he'd never heard of Earth or humans or genetic research. Red markers indicated confirmed human genetic integration across 47 worlds. Yellow markers showed suspected integration across another 63. Green markers, there were no green markers left. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Galactic-scale genetic modification doesn't happen in hours. It takes generations." "For normal species," Maya agreed. "But humans aren't normal. We are what happens when evolution gets desperate. When a species faces extinction so many times that adaptation becomes instantaneous. When survival stops being a trait and becomes the only trait." Dr. Rix Morvan's voice returned, now joined by what sounded like a chorus of other council members. "Novus, we need you to understand something. The human genetic template doesn't just improve individuals, it optimizes entire ecosystems. Worlds that have struggled with environmental collapse are reporting atmospheric stabilization. Societies that have been at war for centuries are finding peaceful solutions. Economies that were failing are thriving. Because you are all being controlled by human genetics. We are being helped," came the correction from dozens of voices speaking in perfect harmony. "The human template doesn't suppress individuality, it enhances collective capability. We are still ourselves, just better versions of ourselves." Maya's voice carried a note of sadness as she continued. "Chief, I tried to warn you. Humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being nice or gentle or civilized. We became dominant by being incredibly, terrifyingly good at survival. And survival, for humans, means making sure the whole group thrives. Even if that group didn't originally include humans. Especially then. Chief, humans have a saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. We don't just adapt to environments, we improve them for everyone." Novus looked around at his transformed crew, all of whom were working with unprecedented efficiency and apparent happiness. They were still recognizably themselves, but they moved with purpose, spoke with clarity, and treated each other with a kindness that had been rare before their transformation. "Maya," he said quietly, "what happens to species that refuse integration?" "Nothing violent," she replied. "Humans are pack hunters, but we are also caretakers. Non-integrated individuals become protected members of the community. Think of it as voluntary symbiosis. And if an entire species refuses, then they miss out on the greatest evolutionary leap in galactic history. But they will be safe, protected, and probably quite puzzled by how well everything starts working around them." Dr. Rix Morvan's voice returned with an announcement that made Novus's heart stop. "All station personnel, this is the Galactic Council. Effective immediately, human genetic integration is being classified as the most beneficial medical advancement in recorded history. Integration protocols are now voluntary but strongly recommended across all member worlds." Novus looked at his remaining untransformed crew members, saw the curiosity replacing fear in their eyes, and realized that the battle was over. It had been over the moment they'd decided to wake up Maya Torres. "Maya," he said finally, "was this planned?" Her laughter was warm, genuine, and absolutely terrifying. "Chief, humans don't plan for conquest. We plan for survival. Everything else is just side effects." Novus stood before Maya's containment cell, his three eyes fixed on the human who had somehow orchestrated the fall of galactic civilization without lifting a finger. She sat calmly on her cell's bench, watching him with the patient expression of someone who had seen this conversation coming from light years away. "You knew," he said finally. "From the moment we captured your ship, you knew exactly what would happen." Maya tilted her head with that peculiar human gesture that the transformed aliens had begun copying. "I knew you'd make the same mistake every other species makes when they encounter humans for the first time. Which is? You assumed we were prey." Maya's smile held no malice, just a kind of weary amusement. Soft, weak, primitive creatures who got lucky with technology. It never occurred to you to ask why we were the ones who survived on Earth. Enlighten me, Thaknovus said, though part of him really didn't want to know. Earth wasn't just a difficult world. Chief. It was a death world. A planet that spent 4 billion years perfecting ways to kill everything that lived on it. Ice ages that lasted millions of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for decades. Asteroid impacts that sterilized continents. Diseases that jumped between. Species faster than evolution could keep up. She stood and approached the containment field, her movements carrying the same fluid efficiency that marked all the transformed personnel. And then there were the other species. Predators with claws longer than your arm, teeth that could crush bones, venom that could drop a creature our size in seconds. Everything on Earth was bigger, stronger, faster, or more toxic than humans. Yet you survived, Thaknovus said quietly. We didn't just survive, Chief, we thrived. We turned every disadvantage into an advantage. Too slow? We learned to think faster. Too weak? We learned to cooperate. No claws? We made tools. No venom? We learned chemistry. No fur? We learned to steal fire from lightning. Maya's eyes held a depth that Thaknovus was beginning to understand meant trouble. But the real secret, the thing that made humans different from every other species that died on Earth, was our ability to adapt not just physically, but socially. We learned to include other species in our survival strategies. Dogs, horses, cattle. Chickens, we didn't just domesticate them. We made them part of our extended family. And now you are doing the same thing to us, Thaknovus realized. Not me, specifically. Human genetics in general. Chief, you have been thinking about this all wrong. You keep calling it infection or contamination, but what's really happening is adoption. Before Thaknovus could respond, his communication array crackled to life with an incoming transmission from deep space. The signal was strong, directed, and carried identification codes that made his blood freeze. This is Admiral Torres of the human colonial fleet, requesting immediate communication with the beings who captured our medical ship Terra Nova. Thaknovus looked at Maya, whose expression had shifted to something between pride and concern. Torres? My sister, Maya said simply. And Chief? She's not nearly as patient as I am. Admiral Torres' voice carried the kind of authority that transcended species barriers. I'm tracking 37 human genetic signatures across this sector. Either my people have been remarkably busy, or someone has been conducting unauthorized experiments with human biological material. Maya, Thaknovus whispered, what exactly was your ship carrying? Medical supplies for the outer colonies, including blood samples from Earth's most genetically diverse populations. Chief, the Terra Nova wasn't just a colony ship, it was a mobile genetic repository. We were carrying the concentrated evolutionary heritage of an entire species. You are a biological weapons platform, Thaknovus said with growing horror. We are a survival mechanism, Maya corrected. Humans learned long ago that keeping all our genetic material in one place was asking for extinction. So we spread it out. Every colony ship carries samples from thousands of different human populations. Admiral Torres' transmission continued. I'm reading massive atmospheric and biological changes across multiple worlds. Changes that suggest large-scale terraforming operations. Since humans are the only species crazy enough to terraform planets by accident, I'm assuming you have made contact with our people. Made contact, Thaknovus muttered. That's one way to put it. Chief, Maya said gently, you need to understand something about my sister. She's military, trained in biological warfare, planetary siege tactics, and species-level threat assessment. When she realizes what you have done, what we have done, Thaknovus sputtered. We followed standard scientific protocols. You weaponized human genetics across multiple star systems without understanding what you were dealing with. From a military perspective, that's either an act of war or an act of incredible stupidity. Admiral Torres' voice returned, now carrying an edge that made Novus's survival instincts scream warnings. I'm detecting human genetic integration in approximately 60% of the local galactic population. Integration rates are increasing exponentially. This suggests either voluntary adoption or forced conversion. Voluntary. Novus shouted into his communicator. The integration is entirely voluntary. It's voluntary now, Maya said quietly. But you started it without consent. You captured us, experimented on us, and released human genetics into an unprepared ecosystem. Admiral Torres is probably classifying this as accidental genocide. Accidental genocide of whom? Everyone's fine. Better than fine. They are improved. From a human perspective, yes. From a galactic legal perspective, you have just committed the largest act of involuntary genetic modification in recorded history. Admiral Torres' voice cut through their conversation like a plasma blade. This is Admiral Torres to all affected systems. Human Colonial Command is implementing Emergency Protocol 7. All human genetic integration will continue under human oversight to ensure proper adaptation and psychological support. What's Protocol 7? Novus asked weakly. Maya's smile was apologetic but firm. Protective occupation. My sister just claimed legal guardianship over every world you have accidentally terraformed. Congratulations, Chief. You have just handed 63 star systems to humanity. That's not what we intended. No, but it's what you accomplished. Chief, humans spent millions of years learning to survive by turning threats into advantages. You thought you captured a specimen for study. Instead, you handed us the keys to an entire galactic civilization. We are not conquerors. Novus protested. No, Maya agreed. We are caretakers. But from your perspective, the end result is probably going to look remarkably similar. Admiral Torres' final transmission sealed their fate. All station personnel stand by for human assistance teams. Medical, agricultural, and social support specialists are en route. Integration counseling will be provided for all affected individuals. Novus looked around at his transformed crew, all of whom were working with unprecedented efficiency and obvious satisfaction. Maya, what have we done? You have accidentally solved most of your civilization's problems while simultaneously ensuring human expansion across the galaxy. Chief, from our perspective, this is the most successful first contact in human history. And from our perspective? Maya's expression was genuinely sympathetic. You have learned why humans don't make good specimens. Chief Scientist Vex Moran's final transmission to Galactic Command was recorded at 1447 Standard Galactic Time, approximately 18 hours after the first blood extraction from Maya Torres. His voice, when analyzed later by xenolinguists, showed clear signs of human genetic integration in its harmonic patterns and emotional resonance. This is Chief Scientist Vex Moran of Helix Research Station, filing my final report on project designation. Well, I suppose it doesn't matter what we called it anymore. His laugh carried that now familiar harmonic quality. Command, I need you to understand something very important. Everything we thought we knew about human biology was wrong. Catastrophically, embarrassingly, spectacularly wrong. He paused, and in the background the sounds of the station's transformation could be heard. Not destruction, but renovation. Walls being restructured, atmospheric systems being optimized, entire sections being redesigned for maximum efficiency and comfort. We captured what we believed to be a primitive specimen from a backwater species. Instead, we captured a medical officer from the most successful survival-based civilization in galactic history. Maya Torres knew exactly what would happen when we took her blood. She tried to warn us. We were too arrogant to listen. Vex Moran's report continued as alarms echoed in the distance, though they now sounded more like celebration than emergency alerts. Human genetics aren't just adaptive, Command. They are aggressively beneficial. Every person who's been integrated reports improved cognitive function, enhanced physical capabilities, and most disturbing of all, genuine happiness. We haven't been invaded, Command. We have been adopted. Maya Torres stood in the observation deck of what had once been her containment area, watching as human colonial fleet ships approached the station. Her sister's flagship, the Determination, led a formation of medical and support vessels that moved with the practiced efficiency of a species that had turned first contact into an art form. Maya, came Thak Novus's voice from behind her. His transformation was nearly complete now, his movements carrying the fluid grace that marked all successful integrations. Are you satisfied with what you have accomplished? Satisfied? Maya turned, her expression thoughtful. Chief, this wasn't an accomplishment. This was just inevitable. You took a human medical officer captive and then ignored everything she told you about human biology. What did you think was going to happen? We thought we were conducting routine scientific research. You thought you were dealing with a species that would behave according to your existing models and expectations. That was your mistake, Chief. Humans never behave according to anyone's expectations. We survive by being unpredictable. Through the observation windows, they watched as the first human shuttles docked with the station. The boarding parties moved with military precision, but their actions were those of medical teams rather than invaders. They carried supplies, equipment, and most importantly, genetic counselors trained in integration psychology. Maya, Bex Moran said, approaching with Dr. Quinn Zeta, both of them now showing the enhanced cognitive patterns that marked successful human genetic integration. I need to ask you something that's been bothering me. Go ahead. How long have humans been planning this? Maya's laugh was genuine and slightly exhausted. We haven't been planning anything, Vex. That's what you people keep getting wrong. Humans don't plan for conquest. We plan for survival. And sometimes, survival requires making sure everyone around us survives too. But the genetic repository ship, the perfect positioning for maximum spread, the way your genetics were optimized for our biology. Humans have been preparing for first contact for centuries. Not because we wanted to take over other species, but because we knew we'd probably mess it up somehow. Everything we did was designed to minimize harm, while maximizing beneficial outcomes. Dr. Quinn Zeta, her forearms now moving with unprecedented coordination, gestured toward the approaching human ships. You are saying this was all defensive preparation? Humans learned long ago that the best defense is making sure potential threats become friends and allies. We didn't set out to transform your civilization, Dr. Quinn Zeta. We set out to make sure that if we ever encountered other species, everyone would benefit from the interaction. Admiral Torres' voice crackled through the station's communication system. This is Admiral Torres to all station personnel. Medical teams are standing by to assist with integration counseling. No one will be forced to undergo any procedures. Integration is voluntary, reversible, and completely safe. Reversible? Thak Novus asked with surprise. Of course, Maya replied. Chief, did you really think humans would design irreversible genetic modification? We learned our lesson about that particular mistake several centuries ago. Bex Moran's final transmission resumed, his voice now carrying the calm confidence that marked successful integration. Command, I'm attaching all our research data to this report. Study it carefully. Learn from our mistakes, but more importantly, understand what we have learned about humans. They are not conquerors. They are not invaders. They are survivors who have learned that the best way to survive is to make sure everyone else survives too. The station's emergency systems finally shut down, replaced by the gentle hum of optimized life support systems. Through the corridors, the sound of construction could be heard as human engineering teams worked alongside transformed station personnel to upgrade everything from waste recycling to recreational tour facilities. Maya, Thak Novus said quietly, what happens to us now? Now you get to choose. You can keep the genetic integration and join the human colonial network. You can have it reversed and return to your original biology. Or you can find some middle ground that works for you. Chief, the whole point of human survival strategy is maximizing choices, not eliminating them. And our civilization? Our culture? Our independence? Enhanced preserved, and protected. Humans don't replace cultures, Chief. We add to them. In 6 months, your worlds will be more prosperous, more peaceful, and more uniquely themselves than they have ever been. Admiral Torres' shuttles finished docking, and the sound of boots echoed through the station's corridors. But these weren't the boots of conquerors. They were the footsteps of medics, engineers, social workers, and teachers. Maya Torres turned back to the observation window, watching as more human ships approached carrying supplies, technology, and most importantly, hope. "You know what the real irony is?" she said to her former captors, who were now becoming her colleagues and friends. "You thought you captured a specimen to study human weaknesses. Instead, you discovered humanity's greatest strength. Which is? We turn enemies into family. We turn threats into opportunities. We turn first contact into lasting alliance. Chief, you didn't just study human genetics. You became part of the human story." Outside, the stars held new promise as two civilizations became one, bound together not by conquest or domination, but by the simple human belief that everyone deserves to survive, to thrive, and to belong. The galaxy would never be the same. But then again, that had always been the human way.